Right now, if I had to pick at this particular moment, it would be the Toronto Raptors. I know that even though they've had a few games this year, they should not have lost. There's no question about that. I've been watching them. Nick Nurse has been very impressive as a coach. Masai has done an exceptional job of putting their talent, assembling their talent rather. They have experience. They have perimeter shooting. They have length. They have athleticism. They have depth. And they have somebody with the ability to close in Kawhi Leonard, who's an experienced, championship-tested commodity. You take all of those things into consideration. And considering the way they go at it, I like them a lot. Now, Milwaukee, I underestimated them in terms of their ability to shoot perimeter shots, particularly when Brogdon was there. And if Brogdon and Mirotic end up coming back as they advance in the playoffs, Max, we could be having a different discussion. But the reason why I picked Toronto, let's say over Houston or others, is because of those things that I mentioned, the combination of height, athleticism, experience, defense, and a closer. And I'm looking at all of those things, and I'm saying to myself, you're going to go against the Golden State Warriors. It's going to require all of those things in order to knock the Warriors off. And I believe that Toronto has it.
The one place I agree with you in terms of Toronto posing the greatest threat compared to the Rockets, or a greater threat than the Rockets, is depth. Toronto is a deeper team than Houston. I still think the Rockets have posed the greatest threat. I think they can beat the Warriors, and I've said it all along, if James Harden can at least just remain the same guy in the playoffs, hitting shots, not just playing defense and taking the right shots and making the right basketball play, getting the ball to his teammates, but canning shots under pressure. He hasn't done it yet. But if he does it, if he did it last year, I'm telling you right now, and we've been debating this, you don't think so, they'd have been the champions last year. They got to a Game 7, and that was without CP3. They get there this year with CP3. It's a whole different ballgame if Harden comes through under pressure. Now, are they good enough defensively to beat the Warriors, the Rockets, or even compared to the Raptors? In fact, since the All-Star break, know who the best defensive team is in basketball since the All-Star break? The Houston Rockets. You know, the whole thing about Bzdelik, and they got off to a slow start defensively. Bzdelik retired, remember? They brought him back. And then the defense turned around. And since the All-Star break, it's been the best there is, defensive efficiency. And by the way, that's probably not coincidental with the fact that CP3 is healthy again. I mean, like, the fact is, without CP3 for how many games? 20, 30 games. Without CP3, they have almost as a 5 games lesser record than Toronto. And that's in the West. And that's without their second best player. But he's healthy. Harden's healthy. Think about this complement of players. In high leverage moments, they can run out against the Warriors. CP3 and Harden and Gordon and PJ Tucker and Clint Capella. That's tough. But the main thing is they showed last year already that they can match up with Golden State and give them fits. They had a Game 7 at home without their second best player. They were still in a position to win, even though they had the worst shooting night in the history of basketball from outside. If Harden hits shots, they can do it.
Well, here's where, listen, how can I put this? Understand where I'm coming from with this. James Harden is sensational. He's a league MVP as far as I'm concerned. We get that. What has been my argument against James Harden and the Houston Rockets? It's not about what they can't do, Max. It's about what their tendencies are. Defensively, without Ariza, they're still formidable now because Kenneth Faried has been a big-time pickup for them. You have him, Capella, and Tucker on your front line. That's a formidable defensive unit. So I understand it, particularly with Bzdelik coaching them. I get that. But offensively, even though you have Chris Paul there, the tendency is to give the ball to James Harden, let him dance on folks, do whatever it is that he does. And I believe that makes them relatively one-dimensional. When they played Milwaukee the other night, when we had that discussion about the game that was coming up, what happened? They're going to beat you by shooting threes, or they're going to go down swinging. That's what they do. Milwaukee wasn't going for that. They got out in the open court, created open shot opportunities for themselves. They were defending, et cetera, et cetera. So when you're Harden and you're going against Golden State, the argument that I am making is that in the best of a 7 series, James Harden's not going to get away with doing that 4 times, which
Yeah,
is
but
how
I'm
many
not-
victories you need.
look,
And they don't have, and
once
unlike
upon a
last year,
time-
home court advantage is at the Oracle this time around.
Look,
because
right.
Golden State has a higher seed.
Once upon a time, Daryl Morey said, before they got CP3, we have a puncher's chance against Golden State, because he knew he'd place a lot of bets on three-point shots, and if they all
Right.
went in, and in best of 7, they win. But it's unlikely. He knew it was unlikely. Once you get CP3 on that team, here's the difference now. You're right, Stephen A. If you're just taking perimeter shots, you're going to lose. But if you have 2 guys at an elite level who can get dribble penetration, it's not like in the old days of 5 posting up and getting into the paint that way. It's still about the painted area. But you got 2 guys on the floor at the same time in crunch time who can get to the paint, collapse the defense,
talking about what
either
they
get
can
to the
do.
line or kick it out.
And that's where you and I are parting ways, because you're talking about what they can do. I'm not questioning what they can do. I'm talking about what their tendency is to do. And I'm saying that along those lines, I have seen the Houston Rockets play exactly how you said they should play, Max. That particular game and win it. And then the next game, we're looking at them and we're like, what happened? Because you couldn't do the same thing
what
against Golden
happened
State.
last year?
Whereas because of the purposes of this discussion, who's best suited, I'm looking at a Toronto squad that doesn't do something like that, that has the length, that has the athleticism, that has the experience, that has perimeter shooting, that can lock in defensively, and they have a closer. I'm looking at all of those different things, and they're not one-dimensional.
You trust Kyle
and that's why
Lowry
I'm
in the
giving
big
them
moment?
a better edge.
Do you trust Kyle? I think the way I'm talking about James Harden has to prove it in the playoffs, I think the same thing about Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, but and there's a legitimate question. But I also think that Nick Nurse against those guys, only because of his miniature size, I think there would be times where you'd hand the ball to Kawhi or somebody else and take Kyle Lowry out of the game
Why not the
because of his
passer that
size
some of the other guys
deficiency.
are?